Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evolve, where we focus on the evolution of leadership. And I'm Kim Ford, your host. And today I would like to introduce you to a very, very good friend and long-term friend. Vik, do you mind introducing yourself and your company? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, Kim, it's great to be here, first of all. Thank you for having me. I'm Vik Bangia. I'm the CEO of Verum Consulting. It's my own consulting practice, corporate real estate, strategy and operations consulting, and outsourcing advisory. So I spend about 60% of my time helping large corporations put together real estate outsourcing service contracts with the larger service providers, typically the JLLs, CBREs, Cushmans of the world, because most of these accounts are large, global integrated service accounts. But I work along those lines in corporate real estate outsourcing. And then I also do strategy and operations consulting, which is kind of a big box of services, which includes everything from workplace strategy to prop tech firms and startup firms, and helping companies stand up a business development function or do SOC compliance, all sorts of interesting things in that bucket. Then the rest of my time is typically spent in corporate leadership training, as well as things like this, public speaking and podcasts and webinars. So again, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people have been impacted in many different ways. How has the pandemic impacted you and your clients?
Well, for my clients, certainly it's been a huge impact. They've gone from having everybody in the office to having everybody work remotely. I've always been a consultant traveling everywhere. So for me, the biggest impact is I haven't traveled anywhere since February of 2020. And prior to that, I did, I think, 77 flights in 2019 and spent 200 nights on the road. So for me, it was a huge change to not travel. But as far as my business was concerned, business has kept steady through the pandemic because my clients are still in need of what I do. But I've been able to work remotely. I've been able to work from my home office, and I've been able to retool all the things that I do in the real estate outsourcing world to more of a virtual environment like this, where all the meetings are on Zoom or on Teams or other collaborative software. And it's actually been even better because, I'm bringing in people from Singapore, where I'm on calls 8 o'clock at night, or in London, where I'm on at 6 in the morning. It's just real easy to do that when I'm in my pajamas rather than having to suit up and fly there, right? So it's been great.
So many times during the pandemic on a conversation, I'm like, please just tell me you're wearing pants, right? That becomes like the big joke because you only see from here up. And there have been many occasions where I have like a really nice, beautiful blouse on, and then I'm wearing like joggers or yoga pants because nobody knows, and you were stuck at home. So I'm very pleased to be back at the office. It just feels so good I love that concept of leaving the house, driving, going somewhere else. I don't know. I mean, it's not necessarily I don't mind being home too. So I love this whole concept of hybrid. And I look forward to seeing how that kind of progresses with different companies and how they adjust to that. Have you had to adapt your business model because of all these changes, or did things kind of just flow for you?
No, actually, I did adapt it a little bit, and there's some things that have fallen off a little bit as a result of that. Because in the preliminary part of what I do with every client, it's called a discovery process. And there, I actually have to read the room. I have to see people's body language. I have to kind of understand the team dynamics, and that's difficult to do when you're remote. So I went and retooled the way that gets done. So it still works, but it's a little bit not as elegant as it is when you do it in person. But that's really the only thing that's shifted. Everything else has pretty much stayed the same. But during the pandemic, because I've been home, which has been a rarity for me for so long, I've had the ability to rediscover my life. I've, did a huge landscaping project that I had, put off to the side for years and years. And just really enjoyed being at home, seeing my kids more often, all sorts of things that were kind of, luxuries now were routine, which was great. And I don't think I'll ever go back to spending 200 nights a year on the road. Even after the pandemic and even after I go back to traveling, it'll be at a more human pace, where maybe it'll be a couple times a month or something like that.
Yeah, well, your dog certainly appreciates you being home.
Yeah, absolutely.
I joke
Absolutely.
that my dogs are much happier than my children. My children are like, Mom, can you go to work? We were competing for like who was being the loudest because my daughter was a musical theater major at the time. And so she would be dancing in the kitchen because the instructor, she'd have her laptop on the island and I'd be on a conference call having to listen to her, rap music. And it became this huge challenge. Like, okay, honey, we have to line our schedules because you can't be blasting music during my conference calls. So it's kind of funny. I think my pets enjoy me being, during that time, enjoyed me home more than my kids did.
Yeah, and mine are older, 21 and 18, so they're kind of independent and have their own lives. So I don't think we see each other any more often than we did when I was away, because we'd see each other a lot more on the weekends. Now it's here and there, and it's the same. So I don't think it's really changed much for them.
Yeah, switching a little bit to more on the basis of what you do, how do you see corporations evolving their office space and physical footprint? Because it's a huge discussion topic right now.
It is, yeah. And I work typically with the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and all of those companies seem to be undergoing this sort of reckoning as to what are they going to do about their future office footprint. And so they're all taking the time right now, which I think is good, to strategically plan what they need to do and avoid making knee-jerk reactions in the short term, because it's really unknown what will actually happen. But I think the world will move to more of a remote hybrid environment, and that is going to impact the corporate real estate strategy for a lot of these companies. I personally think that offices are going to change. Companies are going to change their future office footprint. I think they're going to go to a more horizontal footprint rather than a vertical footprint. So right now you see a lot of, folks trying to revisit that idea of having all of their people come to a downtown CBD where they have to commute, where they have to deal with public transportation, where they have to go up in an elevator in a multi-tenant building with other people that they don't know, that they don't work with, potentially in a place where, the demising wall doesn't go slab to slab, so there's indoor air quality issues and potential contamination there. Lots of factors that are kind of, in that strategy of what to do next. So I see potentially companies moving to a more horizontal environment, maybe moving to the suburbs, maybe moving to other geographies. I see the rise of co-working spaces and touchdown spaces to give people an alternative to going downtown. Like, I live 25 miles out of downtown Minneapolis, and if I could just go 6 miles to a WeWork or to another co-working space and my employer would allow that, I think it would make, things a lot better on the days that I couldn't work from home. But working from home is now a thing. So, I see more people opting for a remote or hybrid lifestyle, even if they're given the opportunity to work from an office. And then from a mega trend standpoint, and just because I live in the heartland of the United States, which most people call flyover country here in Minneapolis, I still believe that there's going to be this trend towards what I call internal offshoring, which means companies moving their operations away from the coasts of the United States to the heartland of the United States, where labor is cheaper, where real estate is cheaper, and where the talent exists. If I'm here in Minneapolis and I'm providing value to a company that's in Boston, they don't have to pay me a Boston salary. They can pay me a Minnesota salary and I can live here. So I see that happening, but I think that's going to roll out slower, but I still see it happening.
Yeah. Do you think corporate real estate outsourcing is going to evolve then as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the outsourcing part, which again, as I mentioned earlier, I spend about 60% of my time helping corporations with those service provider relationships. What's happening in my view is that companies are coming to me and saying, you know what, we're okay now with bifurcating the services that we used to go to one provider to get. So, they're more open to saying, look, we're happy to manage multiple contracts if we can get the best of each service. In other words, I want the best transaction management team. And it might be different than the best facilities management team or the best lease administration team. I don't care if I have 3 different companies doing those 3 different services, as long as I'm getting the best of the best. So managing multiple contracts, which used to be, oh, don't make me do that if I'm the procurement department. Now they're willing to address that. And then some of my clients are even, asking me to, help them with things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They're saying, you know what, we as a corporate real estate and facilities management department need to be a partner in this particular discipline, but we don't know where to start. And our service providers don't do this. So how can you help us, bring in the right DEIB consultant or the right leadership consultant to train people on compassionate management and empathy? And all of those things, I'm all of a sudden finding out that I have to build a platform from my own consulting practice to bring those services in. So I've actually created a network of companies that are all focused on the employee-centric future of work that I can bring along with me and say, okay, the service providers can do all this stuff, but if you need all these other things that are typically missing from their platform, I can help you with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's two words that came out of the pandemic that companies, at least mid-size and smaller for sure, never even paid attention to, and that's mental health and well-being. How do you see that being kind of applied to now? Because to me, it's always been a huge problem. Companies overlook the fact that if you work people so hard, and they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to be great producers in your company. And so do you think there's going to be major changes as companies start paying attention to those two words?
I think there has to be. To me, this is probably the biggest issue that's not talked about enough. I've been reading a lot in the area of mental health and well-being. In fact, next week I'm doing a webinar for the local International Facilities Management Association chapter on retaining employees in an uncertain environment. And I'm doing it with a partner of mine who focuses on mental health and well-being. But, there's a McKinsey article out there that says that 25% of workers actually have some sort of mental health issue related to the pandemic, whether it's anxiety or depression or substance abuse, or just something related to having been isolated for so long. Microsoft has a 2021 work index, and both of these articles are available publicly on the internet. But in that article, they say that 40% of employees are considering leaving their job. So if you've got 25% of folks that have mental health issues, 40% of people leaving their job, you're going to see, that things like digital fatigue are real, that you're going to see people, move away from employers that don't address mental health and well-being issues. And I think it was the McKinsey article that I mentioned that said in Canada, they actually have a mental health standard. And that's something that I think we can learn from here in the US. But I think since 2013, companies are required to look after their employees' physical as well as psychological well-being. And we don't have that kind of a standard here, but we do have a litigious environment here in this country where if you don't do this and there is a negligence standard and a liability for a duty of care, you're going to see a lot of companies suffer if they don't look at after their employees' mental health and well-being. So I think companies are going to be wise to address this, and they're going to suffer if they don't, because their employees are just going to leave and say, I'd rather go work for somebody who, pays more attention to my mental health and well-being, provides me a facility to work in that actually makes me healthier than my home office, gives me alternatives for caring for myself through either physical activity or, all of the DALO standards for food. And there's a number of, ways that companies can address these issues, from acoustics to lighting to thermal comfort to indoor air quality to physical activity and gyms and all sorts of other things.
Or providing that type of amenity. I have a really good friend in Chicago that started a company that you would appreciate called LulaFit. And what they do is they actually amenitize and they provide that type of service to office buildings. So they're coming in and actually bringing the gym instructors, bringing the cafes, bringing amenities so that, the building owner that's not what they do. That's not their business. And so they're making these buildings a great place to work so that they're offering that kind of well-being, mental health balance that people need.
Sure.
It's going to be, I really hope that companies of all sizes realize what an issue this is and really start to, I mean, we buy everybody, if they want, we buy everybody treadmill desks because it's great just to move, even if it's just an hour of a day walking at a slow pace, typing things that you can. It makes a huge difference. We do walking meetings. Why do we need to sit in a conference room? Let's do a loop around the development. And
Yeah.
we've been doing it forever. And I think it makes a huge difference. People seem so much happier, and there's no reason why companies aren't adopting these types of concepts going forward.
And it's fairly inexpensive to provide that, even if it's something that's app driven and pushed to you, which is, again, I just mentioned the IFMA chapter webinar that I'm going to do next week. I'm doing it with a company called 24A Life, which has developed an app with the Mayo Clinic that actually takes all of those things, your diet, your exercise, your mental health and well-being, your social connectivity, puts it all into an app and then sends stuff to you to remind you, oh, it's time to get up and walk around. Yeah. Oh, have you done a walking meeting today? If not, you should do a walking meeting today. I see that you have a 1 o'clock. Why don't you make that a walking meeting?
That's great.
It tells you, hey, you know what? Tonight, have a kale salad. It'll. I don't know what it tells you, but it's
tonight.
It is Friday night and it is pizza night, but no, but it's something that actually then sends you gentle reminders that allow you to actually improve your well-being, because all of a sudden you have, even if it's electronic, you have a friend now, you have somebody who's actually looking after your mental health, but it's coming from your company, which then makes you appreciate your company more, which then keeps you connected to your company and unwilling to leave them because now they're looking after your mental health. So I think that's probably the biggest issue and something I wish more people were talking about, because I've seen it. I've talked to my clients. I'm on the phone with them all the time, and I can hear it in their voices, the weariness, the fatigue, the resignation that they feel like, I don't know what the future is going to be like. I got to get out of this house. Oh my God, my kids are driving me crazy, or whatever it is. There's a lot going on, and it all of a sudden all just kind of mashed together during the pandemic. And we used to separate work from home to the gym to social life. Now it's all just this big ball. And some people manage it well, but a lot of people don't. 25%, according to McKinsey, don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of business leaders are really struggling. What advice do you have for business leaders as they kind of try to navigate what's next?
Well, I think the first thing is that, we have a lack of training, especially in this country, of appreciating and feeling compassion and empathy for others. Managers have always been very hard driving, hard charging people. And oftentimes employees have looked at that as a us versus them mentality. I think Zoom has changed a little bit of that, because now everybody's wearing a t-shirt and being on a webinar as opposed to suiting up. And so we've kind of all realized we're all people. That's a good first step. But I think the actual, practical training has yet to take place, where employers learn how to understand their employees better, manage with compassion and empathy. And so I think if we can train leaders to understand better, then that's the first step. And that would be my advice, is take some training in compassionate leadership and empathy. I still see so much out there, especially on LinkedIn, where leaders of a lot of financial services companies are saying things like, well, you better come back to the office or else. Well, that's just not how it's going to be in the future. And it's not going to work.
No.
And we're already, as a society, very angsty because of all the polarization that a pandemic and politics and all sorts of other things have put in place. So let's get past all of that, take all that off and realize that we're all people and figure out a better way to manage. And so if I can help in that regard, I'm trying to do that. But I'm always giving my clients advice that, be aware that this is a powder keg. There, all of these things that exist today are either going to result in employees leaving you, or bad behavior in the office, or a reduction in customer sentiment about your company, reputational risk, all sorts of other things. So the first thing you got to do is teach compassionate management. And then the second thing you got to do is allow your employees to have the flexibility that they need. Listen to them, make sure that you're taking cues from them, and then whatever they tell you, act on it. Even if you don't do it, act on the sentiment, address it. Because if you ignore it, people are just going to say, you know what, I work for a faceless corporation that doesn't care. And guess what? The minute I can get out of here, I'm out of here.
Yeah, so true. Well, our goal with Evolve is to help leaders to learn, connect, and grow together. And Vik, thank you for taking your time today. I really appreciate it. And it's always great to catch up. And I look forward to seeing you somewhere, because I think you and I, every time we've seen each other, it's been in a different city every single time.
It has.
I look forward.
It has. Yeah, I look forward to it as well. And I know in 2022, I'll be back on the road, of course, at a reduced pace, but I'll be back on the road. So I look forward to seeing you in person somewhere soon as well.
Connect.
Yeah. Thanks again for the invitation to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vik. Have a great day. All right.